She paid for her seat. She showed her ticket. She wore confidence like a second skin. But none of that stopped them from trying to erase her because of how she looked. When Amira Langston, a calm yet formidable black tech CEO, boarded Flight 1193, she didn't expect applause. She expected respect. Instead, what she got was deletion, literal and digital. Her name vanished from the system, her presence labeled a disturbance. And what happened next? It wasn't an outburst. It wasn't revenge. It was something far more dangerous to the status quo, a quiet woman with power. Press and record. Why did the airline crew risk everything to silence her? How did she flip the cabin, the staff, and eventually an entire industry without ever raising her voice? What would you do if you watched justice unfold at 35,000 feet? This isn't just a story about a stolen seat. It's about reclaiming a space that was always hers. If you're ready to see what happens when one woman rewrites the rules in real time, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's board Flight 1193 together, the boarding line for Pacific Air. Flight 1193 crawled forward in steady rhythm. A quiet murmur of wheeled suitcases and last-minute gate announcements humming in the background. First-class passengers were already being ushered in, the red carpet flanked by velvet ropes and polite smiles. Dr. Amira Langston stepped forward when her group was called. Calm, composed, and dressed in a charcoal-gray knit travel set with minimalist gold accents. She looked every bit the modern professional. Her white sneakers were spotless. Her black hair was pulled into a soft bun. No flash, just function. But beneath that quiet exterior was a woman built from steel. She held out her phone to the boarding scanner, the 1A, first class, glowing clean and bright on her Pacific Air app. The beep was clean, but the pause was deliberate. Colleen Brask, the lead flight attendant, stared down at the phone. Her painted smile didn't flicker, but her eyes narrowed just enough to reveal the thought behind them. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right lane?" Her voice was sweet, syrupy, the kind that stings more than soothes. Amira looked her in the eye. "Yes," she said simply. Seat 1A. Behind her, a woman in pearls and a Chanel blazer leaned in, chuckling. "Oh, sweetheart," the woman said with a tone dipped in venomous honey. "This is first class." Amira didn't turn around. She'd heard that tone too many times before in boardrooms, interviews, even casual dinners where the wine flowed freely and assumptions ran unchecked. "Ah, no," she said quietly. Colleen's fingers moved across her tablet with unhurried disdain. Strange. You don't seem to be showing up on the roster." Amira raised her wrist and tapped her phone again. The system scanned it. "Must be a glitch," Colleen replied, with the kind of smile that says not really. "You may want to check with the gate agent." Another passenger behind them cleared their throat, impatient. The line was backing up. Amira stood still, calm, centered. But inside, something clenched. Not because this was new, far from it, but because it was too familiar. She remembered being 12, standing in a private school hallway, holding a math trophy twice the size of her head while a substitute teacher asked, "Who did you steal that from?" She remembered job interviews where they marveled at her resume but never called her back. She remembered being called articulate in a room full of Ivy League graduates. And now, this, not surprising, but exhausting. "I'm not confused," Amira said, "and I'm not moving to economy." Colleen's expression chilled. "Excuse me, my ticket is valid, my boarding pass is confirmed, my seat is 1A. You can scan it again if you'd like." The screen above the kiosk suddenly blinked. The boarding confirmation vanished. In its place, seat not assigned. Amira tilted her head slightly. "Did you just remove me from the manifest?" Colleen gave a theatrical shrug. "It's the system, not me." A soft scoff from the Chanel lady. "Maybe she's flying standby." Amira's grip on her phone tightened just enough to feel it, but her voice never rose. "Is there a supervisor available?" she asked. Colleen stepped forward, dropping her smile. "You're creating a disturbance. If you can't step aside, I'll have to call security." A few more passengers turned to look. The murmurs started low, uncomfortable. A man in a gray business suit smirked. "Here we go again." Another whispered, "She doesn't look like first class." Amira took a breath, long, controlled, not for them, for herself. She thought of her daughter, Neva, who had whispered last week while braiding her hair. "Mommy, you're the strongest woman I know." She thought of her father's funeral, where not one tech executive who had praised her breakthroughs in public had shown up. She thought of her mother's last voicemail. "You don't fight to be seen. Amira, you build something they can't ignore." Her thumb brushed over the smooth surface of the black jade ring on her right hand, a custom wearable she and her engineers had designed. Not for style, for signal. One tap. The pulse beneath the surface was faint, silent, but it traveled to a server, to a private relay, to someone on board watching quietly. Her eyes never left Colleen's. "I'll take my seat now," Amira said and stepped forward. Colleen blocked her with one arm. "You're not on my list." Amira didn't respond. Not to her. She looked past her, down the aisle of the aircraft into the quiet echo of the cabin that had welcomed her kind of silence many times, but never her kind of skin. She wasn't here to fight. She was here to show them something. And soon, they'd see it. The moment Amira stepped into the cabin, a hush followed her like shadow. She didn't look angry. She didn't storm. She simply walked, past judgmental glances, past half-hidden smirks, past the quiet contempt that wrapped itself in civility. Seat 1A stood empty, waiting, lit with a gentle blue glow. But Colleen Brask's presence lingered just behind her, like a storm cloud refusing to drift. Amira slid into the seat slowly, placing her leather tote under her feet. She adjusted her jacket, exhaled through her nose, and leaned back not to relax, but to recalibrate. She wasn't here to make noise. She was here because she earned it. 15 years ago. She was coding on a second-hand laptop in the back of a church shelter in Atlanta. She didn't have venture capital. She didn't have pedigree. She had problems and the patience to write the answers. Ethora Systems was born from those nights. Now it powered logistics and behavioral monitoring across dozens of airlines, including Pacific Air. Amira had long suspected Pacific was misusing her tech. A quiet audit last quarter confirmed it. Racial bias in crew packs reassignment, system tampering, black passengers reassigned mid-flight, data anomalies, they said. Today wasn't just personal, it was operational. Her ring, a smooth black jade band. Minimalist and subtle, wasn't just jewelry. Beneath the polished stone lay a micro-haptic signal chip, encoded with emergency protocols. She had tapped it once in the terminal. Now, seated. She tapped again. No sound, no flash, just a quiet vibration under her finger. On the other end of the signal, seat 4C lit up. Sarah Devine, dressed in oversized sweats, looked up briefly. She wore round glasses, a messy bun, and held a paperback book she hadn't turned a page of in 10 minutes. She wasn't reading. She was observing. Sarah had boarded under a dummy booking. Compliance agent. Her Ethera-issued lenses displayed back-channel signals. System health. Real-time crew activity. She blinked twice. Signal received. Meanwhile, in 2A, Malik Green, a third-year law student at Howard, frowned as he watched the exchange unfold. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but when you see someone erased in real time and do nothing, what kind of lawyer are you training to be his gut twisted? He'd seen similar stories in news threads. But seeing it happen live, watching this poised black woman get glitched out of her own seat, hit different. His hands shook slightly as he pulled out a folded FAA passenger rights printout from his satchel. He always traveled with it. People laughed. No one was laughing now. A few rows back, Ezra Montrose, 22 freelance videographer, tightened his grip on his phone. He hadn't started filming yet, but he would. Soon. He knew a moment was forming. You can't always tell, but this one it had that weight, like when he filmed his uncle being denied service at a restaurant and the video got picked up by 3 networks. Like when he recorded a protester getting arrested for standing still. This was that same stillness before something cracks. Back in seat 1A, Amira sat perfectly composed, but inside a battle raged. Should I have just let it go? Was it worth it? You have nothing to prove to them. Amira, but what about the next black woman who sits here? She rubbed her wrist gently. The ring buzzed again, 3 short pulses. Confirmation. Sarah was online. The plan was in motion. She remembered the conversation from 4 weeks ago. In her office, late at night. "They're manipulating our interface," Sarah had said flatly. "Switching seats after boarding, deleting log trails. The system flags biased behavior, but they're wiping logs mid-flight." Amira didn't say much. She just leaned back, stared at the blinking server logs, and nodded. "Let's fly with them," she finally said, quietly. Let them show their hand. Today, they had. Colleen passed by, her gait stiffer now, her face tight with restrained superiority. She leaned close. "I'd still appreciate it if you didn't cause a scene. Dr. Langston," her whisper laced with threat. Amira met her gaze, calm, collected. "I don't need to." Colleen blinked. She hadn't expected that. No anger, no fear, just quiet control. That unsettled her more than a raised voice ever could. She turned and walked off toward the galley, heels clicking too fast for confidence. Malik leaned forward and whispered across the aisle. "Ma'am, if they mess with your seating log again, it violates 3 FAA regulations. Just so you know." Amira offered the faintest smile. "Thank you," she said, voice barely above a breath. "I do." In 4C, Sarah's lens flashed a warning. Tampering detected, data edit in progress, passenger profile Langston, a reassignment queued. Sarah blinked twice, confirmed intercept, and reached down to tap her own ring. Backup recording activated. Let them try. This time, the system would remember. The engines outside rumbled softly, that low, steady thrum that usually brought comfort before takeoff. But inside the first-class cabin of Pacific Air Flight 1193, the air was shifting. It wasn't panic, not yet, just something quieter, thicker, like a storm cloud starting to press in through the seams. Ezra Montrose pressed record. The lens of his phone stayed steady on Colleen Brask. who stood stiff-backed near the front of the cabin, checking the manifest again with a visible scowl. He wasn't doing it for clicks. This wasn't content. This was evidence. He had watched the moment her fingers swiped down and deleted something from the crew tablet. She tried to make it look routine, but Ezra knew what casual deletion looked like. He'd worked post-production gigs. People always underestimated what was visible when they thought no one was watching. And see out 3D. Talia Renner adjusted her scarf and opened a soft-covered notebook. She had flown enough to know the sign's uncomfortable body language, hushed tones, the crew too quiet or too loud. She was a journalist, and more importantly, a journalist with instinct. When she saw Amira Langston quietly seated unbothered, but not at ease, her pen started moving. She jotted the basics: black woman, first class, denied seat access, crew visibly rattled, subject composed, not disruptive, yet removed from manifest. She hadn't intended to work on this flight, but some stories don't knock. They take a seat right beside you. Amira remained still in seat 1A, her posture straight but not rigid. On the outside, unbothered. Inside, tightly coiled. She was monitoring her breathing, counting, holding. Her ring buzzed again, one long pulse. Sarah's silent alert. The meaning was clear. You've been reassigned. Again. It was happening in real time. She tapped her ring once in acknowledgement and closed her eyes. Not fear. Not now. You prepared for this, but deep within her, something stirred a mixture of grief and rage and exhaustion. How many times would she have to re-earn what she'd already bought? How many more people would need to see her as a lesson before seeing her as a person? In 2A, Malik Green unfolded his printout again, flipping to a highlighted section. No carrier may willfully misassign, downgrade, or remove a paying passenger from their booked class of service due to non-safety-related discrepancies. He glanced over toward Amira, then toward the screen overhead still displaying her seat as unassigned. He whispered under his breath, "That's a violation." His hands itched to speak up, but something held him back. A childhood memory flashed: his mother pulling him back from a store counter after being wrongly accused of shoplifting. "They won't listen, baby," she had said. "They'll see your defense as aggression," but this woman hadn't even defended herself. She hadn't needed to. So why did she still get erased? He tightened his jaw. Not this time. Back in the galley, Logan Reese, the onboard technician, handed Colleen a narrow silver USB stick. She took it like someone accepting sugar for coffee. Small, casual, forgettable. Ezra zoomed in from his angle. The exchange was quick, but not quick enough. The device slid into the rear panel of the cabin console. Lights flickered for a moment, then stabilized. To most, it looked like maintenance. To Amira, it was manipulation. To Sarah, in 4C, it was confirmation. She blinked twice. Data diverged. Passenger record scrubbed. Again. Sarah tapped her wrist device under her sleeve. Redundancy log enabled. Everything from this point forward would be stored in triple encrypted cloud backup. Uneditable, untraceable. They were bearing the data, but they were bearing themselves. Back in the cabin, Colleen approached Amira with a practiced smile, 2 rows of teeth and 0 warmth. "Ma'am, I'll need to ask you to return to your new seat. It seems there was a seat-in error." Amira didn't blink. She didn't look up. She just let the silence stretch. Colleen pressed further. "You've been reassigned to 19B. A pause. Then Amira spoke. "I have not." Your name's not showing up here anymore. That's not my fault. Passengers nearby shifted in their seats. Tension became tangible. The unspoken became nearly spoken. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Colleen hissed. I'm not, Amira replied softly. You are. Talia's pen stopped. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Recording on this wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. This was a story, and someone needed to hear it. Ezra whispered to Malik across the aisle. You see that USB earlier? Malik nodded. Caught it on camera. Ezra said, twice. Malik exhaled. You keep filming, I'll keep talking. He folded up his FAA sheet and stood. Excuse me, he said toward Colleen. His voice was steady, respectful. But I believe you're violating federal transport law by forcibly reassigning a confirmed passenger without cause or consent. Colleen turned. Her jaw tensed. And you are someone who understands the law better than your software. Amira finally turned her head slightly, eyes catching Malik's for the first time. A quiet, mutual recognition passed between them. Not savior and saved. Just two people who knew the cost of silence. She gave him a small nod. That was all it took. The lights in the first-class cabin flickered once, then again. Subtle, barely enough to notice. But Sarah Devine noticed. Behind her lenses, lines of code ran in silent procession. The onboard network was pulsing with false edits, reroutes, overrides, suppressions. Someone was actively manipulating flight records in real time, and the target wasn't hiding. It was Amira Langston, seat 1A, wiped again. The system had reassigned her twice, once to a seat that didn't exist, then to the manifest code used for non-boarded standby. In the system's eyes, Amira no longer existed. Sarah tapped her knee, twice a custom signal. Under her tray table, her secondary device lit up, displaying the real-time behavior map. All points were blinking red near the service galley. Logan Reese was doing something he thought no one could see, but Ithora Systems never relied on visibility. It relied on accountability. Meanwhile, Amira sat still. Not stiff still. There's a difference. Stillness was her armor. Not a silence of surrender, a silence of watching. She had already pressed her ring again, this time activating a third protocol. Echo layer. It was an invisible feedback system designed to mirror every onboard action to 3 remote backup servers across the country. Whatever Logan was doing behind the panel, whatever Colleen was whispering to the cockpit, whatever passenger profile was being overwritten, it was all being recorded in triplicate, with timestamps, with audit trails, with consequences, in 3D. Talia Renner typed a phrase into her phone. Data doesn't lie, but people sure try. She paused, watched Colleen stride past her aisle, chin up, trying to mask the sweat beneath her cheekbones. Talia had covered government fraud, whistleblower retaliation, tech abuse. But this was too poetic to be fiction. A woman erased, digitally, visibly, deliberately, and yet she remained calm. Talia didn't even know Amira's full name yet, but she already knew how the article would begin. This wasn't turbulence, it was strategy, and she was built for both. Back near the service panel, Ezra Montrose shifted in his seat. He had captured the USB handoff earlier. Now, he caught Logan again, this time typing furiously on the embedded panel's small touchscreen. Ezra angled his phone. The screen briefly showed a menu. Passenger logs, modify 1A, reassign, null 1A history, delete logs, override. The last command glowed yellow, then flashed executed. Ezra's heart dropped. They're not just moving her, he whispered. They're erasing her. He uploaded a still shot to his encrypted cloud folder, tagged it Flight 1193 Fraud 1.bng. His hands shook not from fear, but from furious disbelief. Back at the front, Mallet Green returned to his seat, chest tight. He had spoken up, and now, he was questioning everything. Was it enough? Did I say it clearly? Did I sound too aggressive? Not aggressive enough? Will she even thank me, or did I just make things worse? The thoughts swirled, but then Amira glanced over her shoulder. Briefly, she met his gaze, held it, and in that single second, something unspoken passed between them. You did the right thing. That was enough. Colleen returned to the aisle, this time carrying a printed manifest sheet, outdated, doctored, irrelevant. She waved it in front of Amira like a permission slip. Per this list, she said loudly, you're not seated here. We'll need you to vacate. I'm not going anywhere, Amira replied softly. This isn't a debate. It's not. More heads turned. From 2C, from 3A, from the economy curtain where a flight attendant lingered, suddenly watching with new eyes. The hum of the aircraft remained, but the emotional current had changed. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a pattern. Inside the galley, Logan whispered to Colleen. We've scrubbed her down to standby. Even the seat logs are clean now. There's no way to prove she was ever on the manifest. Colleen nodded. Good. Call security when we hit the runway. She'll be escorted off before anyone tweets. They hadn't noticed Sarah leaning near the curtain. Head down, quiet, recording. Then came the fourth buzz. Amira's ring vibrated a sequence of quick taps. Sarah's signature, full sync complete. Recording in progress. Amira didn't move. She didn't smirk. She didn't react at all. She just blinked and waited. She thought of her mentor, Elijah Toussaint, who once told her the most powerful person in the room isn't the one who speaks loudest. It's the one who doesn't flinch. In her stillness, Amira was watching more than people. She was watching systems, the way authority is weaponized, the way people accept injustice if it wears a polite face, the way silence becomes compliance. She hadn't built Ethora to punish. She built it to expose. And now, the exposure was inevitable. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the flight crew prepared for takeoff. Seat belts clicked. Safety announcements played. But no one was really listening, because something else was starting, something off script. In Seat 1A, Amira Langston gently tapped the rim of her ring twice. Not once more. Not 5 times. 2 taps. That was the command. The signal whispered through her sleeve, across a near-field circuit in the hem of her hoodie, to the Nexus relay node quietly installed in her travel tote. And from there to the cloud. On the screen of Ezra Montrose's phone, a soft vibration pulsed. He looked down. A file was incoming. Field name, F1193 primary, MP4. He hadn't requested anything, but he knew what this was. The video had been recorded from Sarah's lens, high resolution, time-stamped, framed perfectly on Logan's panel as he deleted Amira's seat data. Seconds later, Amira's calm voice played in the background. I'm not going anywhere. Colleen's reply followed, loud and dismissive. It was all there, undeniable. Ezra uploaded the file to a secure drive and then tapped post. Caption, they deleted her seat, Mid-flight, she paid, she showed the ticket, still gone. Watch this. Hashtags, flight, 193, Haas erased, in first class, Haas Amira Langston. Meanwhile, Talia Renner's screen flashed. Notification trending story. Black CEO denied mid-air seat. She froze, then blinked. Her phone lit up again. Another alert. Breaking Pacific Air Flight 1193 video goes viral. She wasn't the one who posted it. Someone else had beat her to it. But the ripples had started, and they were gaining speed. Back in seat 2A. Malik Green noticed a young girl 2 rows ahead with her phone out. He leaned forward slightly. Hey, is something happening? She turned the screen so he could see a video, a voice, Amira's. His breath caught. It had only been minutes, and the world was already watching. At the same time, Sarah Devine ran a subroutine on her smartwatch. It tapped into the cabin's internal intercom system, a vulnerability Athora had quietly documented 6 months ago and left as a silent trap door. The goal wasn't disruption, it was exposure. She waited for the cabin's speaker chime, then triggered the playback. A static crackled across the intercom. Then Colleen's voice. She's not one of us. Just wipe her. Then Logan's. No seat, no log, no problem. She's gone. The cabin went dead silent. Heads turned, mouths opened. The words echoed louder than any overhead announcement. Someone whispered, "Did she just say, wipe her?" Another, "They're talking about her, aren't they?" Ezra's phone lit up again. 100,000 views, then 300,000, then 600,000. He looked up, stunned. "It's blowing up." Malik stood again. "Excuse me. Flight crew," he called out toward the galley. This recording was that real. No answer. Colleen was frozen in place near the cockpit, eyes wide. Sarah stepped forward quietly. Now, walking up the aisle, she hadn't spoken yet, hadn't revealed herself, but her presence was undeniable. Amira leaned back in her seat. No smile, no smirk, just steady breath. She thought of her mother again. Justice isn't noise, baby. It's knowing what they did when they thought no one saw, in the cockpit. Captain Lee muted the overhead channel and looked at the cabin crew manager. "What the hell's going on out there?" the manager stammered. We might have a situation." Might he turned back to the console and opened the secure channel. In New York, at Pacific Air Operations HQ. The red alert pinged. It had begun. Ezra's video passed 1 million views. Comments flooded in. She bought the seat. They deleted her because she's black systemic discrimination in real time. This is racism, not a glitch. The public was awake now, and watching. Logan rushed to the rear of the cabin, trying to open his tablet's override menu. The screen blinked red. Access denied. He tapped again, locked, then again, still locked. He turned to a junior flight attendant, who let her board with that ring. The girl blinked. Who he didn't answer, he couldn't, because he didn't know anymore who was watching whom. Back in 1A. Amira closed her eyes for just a moment, not to escape, but to gather strength. She could feel it building around her momentum. People whispering, people filming, people believing her without her having to raise her voice. And still inside her was a calm storm. She opened her eyes and glanced down at her phone. A single message from Sarah Leak confirmed. Cabin locked. Control is shifting. Amira slid her phone back into her tote, then exhaled, softly, silently, but with weight. Colleen Brask stood frozen near the galley. her fingers tightening on the crew tablet as if gripping control. But control had already slipped through her hands, leaked through the speaker system, shared through live streams, and spread like a crack in the polished glass of Pacific Air's luxury brand. Passengers were whispering now, not softly, not out of politeness, but with growing intensity. "She's the one. Right. She paid. I saw her ticket. This is outrageous. Is she still in her seat?" Amira Langston sat calmly in 1A, eyes resting forward, but her thoughts moved like tides under moonlight. She remembered when her company first signed with Pacific Air, the pitch meeting, the promises, the clause about ethical integration. She had believed in it briefly, and then the reports started trickling in. Quiet complaints, redacted logs. Passengers moved without explanation. She'd investigated. She'd warned them. But now, in this moment, she realized something deeper. They hadn't just failed to fix the system. They'd decided she was part of the problem. In row 3, Talia Renner refreshed her feed. 1.7 million views. And climbing. Her inbox buzzed. 2 editors, a morning show producer, a legal podcast host asking if she had audio clearance. No one's calling Colleen, she thought. They're all calling about Amira. The focus was shifting, from incident to injustice, from erasure to reckoning. Logan Reese was in full panic now. His admin privileges were gone, his tablet locked out, his crew system login suspended. He turned to Colleen, eyes wide. She bricked it. He whispered, "The whole system. We're blind." Colleen's jaw clenched. "Then we call Daniel. Daniel Huxley." Pacific Air's senior cabin director boarded 3 minutes later through the rear service door. He was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself like a man who thought apologies were for weaker people. Colleen greeted him halfway down the aisle, voice hushed and urgent. "She's disrupting. She hacked the system." Daniel raised a hand. Which passenger? Colleen pointed subtly toward 1A. Amira didn't flinch. Daniel adjusted his tie, stepped forward, and spoke just loudly enough. "Ma'am, we've had a complaint." Amira looked up, her voice even, her tone exact. "So have I." A ripple moved through the cabin. Passengers leaned in, phones raised again. This was no longer quiet. This was theater. Daniel continued, "I understand there's been some confusion with your seat." "There's no confusion," Amira said. "Your staff removed my credentials mid-boarding. I've since been reassigned, illegally, 3 times. That's a serious accusation." "No," she replied. "It's a documented fact." Malik stood again. He held up the FAA passenger rights printout. Voice steady. "She's not exaggerating. What happened to her is a violation of federal law. You're looking at a lawsuit." Ezra chimed in next. "And a PR nightmare." A third passenger called out, "It's already viral. You're trending." Daniel's face shifted just slightly. That tight upper lip of someone realizing control was no longer an option. Only damage management. Talia turned on her live audio recording. "This is Talia Renner, live on Flight 1193. A black female executive." Daniel turned to her. "Ma'am, I'll need you to stop." She raised her press ID. "Freedom of the press. You should know better." Daniel turned back to Amira. "Look, we can resolve this privately. If you could come with me to the galley." Amira shook her head. "Calm, immovable. Everything they've done has been quiet," she said. "But I won't let this be handled in silence." She tapped her ring once more. The nearest overhead screen flickered. Passengers gasped. because now there was video. On every seatback monitor, a loop began to play. Colleen deleting her name, Logan whispering, "She's not one of us." Daniel nodding, "Remove this troublemaker." The seat manifest vanishing in real time. And Amira saying clearly, "This is my seat." Passengers erupted. She recorded all of it. Holy, they really tried to ghost her. Colleen backed away. Logan looked like he wanted to vanish. And Daniel just stood there, still, pale. The walls of authority had collapsed, and Amira hadn't even raised her voice. In row 4, Sarah Devine quietly updated the back-end dashboard. Her screen flashed live compliance escalation. Stage 2 confirmed. She'd seen revolutions in data, but never in a pressurized metal tube. 30,000 feet in the air. Amira finally stood. Not rushed, not loud, just steady. She looked around the cabin, met every eye she could, and said, "I didn't come here to fight. I came to fly. But when someone deletes your existence, you don't walk away." She turned to Daniel. "I built your systems. I know every protocol, every hidden override, every misuse, and now so does the public." Daniel whispered. "What do you want?" Amira stepped closer. "Accountability, transparency, and for the erasure of people like me to end." The air in the cabin felt heavier now, not from altitude, not from turbulence, but from truth. The truth had filled the aisle like a silent flood, flowing over polished shoes and beneath reclined seats. There was no one seeing it. Overhead, screens continued to loop the footage. Colleen's voice, "Just wipe her." Logan's reply, "She's gone." Daniel's confirmation, "Remove this troublemaker." And then Amira's calm response, "This is my seat." A man in 5B crossed his arms. "I saw her check in," he muttered. She was polite. She didn't raise her voice once. In 6A, an older woman leaned toward her husband. "This is what they do when they think no one's recording." A younger passenger whispered, "They'd never do that to someone like me." And suddenly, the division inside the cabin wasn't first class versus coach. It was those who knew injustice and those just now waking up to it. Colleen backed toward the galley, her jaw tense. She still had her uniform, her badge, her title, but none of those protected her now, because every eye was watching her, not with admiration, but with reckoning. She tried to speak something rehearsed, something corporate, but her voice cracked. "We followed protocol. Ezra Montrose stood in his row. So your protocol is erasing black women from the system." A gasp, a ripple. Someone clapped just once. Daniel turned sharply. Enough, but no one listened to him anymore. Amira Langston didn't move. She didn't need to. The evidence did that for her. Still, her internal voice whispered, "You've done what you came to do. Now comes the choice vengeance, or vision." She looked at Daniel, eyes steady. "I'm not asking for your resignation," she said. "I'm offering you a mirror." He blinked. "A what? A mirror?" She repeated. "So you can see what your culture actually looks like." Malik stepped forward again. "If this goes to court, and it can every person in this cabin becomes a witness." He turned slowly, meeting each face. We all saw it. Sarah, now standing near the galley, tapped her badge. Every system infraction has been logged. Biometric gate data, log file wipes, mid-flight credential deletion. We have it all. Colleen dropped her tablet. The sound echoed far too loudly in the tense cabin. In row 2, a young woman raised her voice. She wasn't loud. She wasn't rude. She wasn't disruptive. She was just black and successful, and that was too much for you. Silence, but not emptiness. Silence with purpose. Daniel's voice softened. What do you want? The question hung. It wasn't about the seat anymore. Amira exhaled slowly, then answered. I want you to stop thinking justice is just an apology and a gift card. I want structure. I want change. I want you to understand that you don't get to silence people with uniforms and passwords anymore. Talia Renner finished typing. She hit publish. Title erased at 30,000 feet. What one flight taught us about power, silence, and deceit within moments. Her phone buzzed. 10K shares, 15K, 30K, trending. In the cockpit, Captain Lee's private console pinged with a secure company alert. All crew cease actions. Full compliance under review. CEO alert flight 1193. The screen blinked again. Langston confirmed identity CEO Ethra Systems. The captain's hand trembled slightly. He turned toward the co-pilot. We just tried to eject the woman who built half our infrastructure. Back in the aisle. Amira stepped to the front. This isn't about firing someone. That's too easy. She scanned the room. It's about confronting the parts of ourselves, our systems, that let us believe some people are worth less, that their presence is suspicious, their tone is threatening, their success unnatural. She paused, then said the words that didn't need volume to thunder. I'm not the only one who's been erased. A murmur spread. Passengers nodded. Some lowered their heads. Some clenched their fists. Others wiped silent tears. It wasn't just Amira's fight anymore. It was everyone's. It began with a single voice. Not Amira's. Not Sarah's, not a lawyer's or a journalist's, just a woman in row 5, middle-aged, tired-eyed, with a scarf wrapped tight against the cold, pressurized air. She raised her voice. I believe her. That was it. No hashtags, no applause, just belief. But belief spreads. In 6C, a young man followed, me too. Then, from 3A, a whisper turned louder. She never once raised her voice. They did everything but drag her out. Daniel Huxley turned to the curtain. Lips pursed. His authority evaporating with every spoken word. He wasn't in charge anymore. The cabin was. Ezra Montrose stood fully now, camera still running. He turned it not on the staff, not on Amira, but toward the faces of passengers speaking up. Say it again, he asked gently. The woman from row 5 nodded. I believe her. This time, it went live. I believe her streaming from 30,000 feet. In her seat, Amira Langston felt it. Not fame, not vindication, support, real, uncoached, unpaid for. And suddenly her breathing hitched. It wasn't weakness, it was release. Because for the first time, in a very long time, she wasn't alone. Near the galley, Colleen leaned into Logan, panicked. They're turning on us. They're turning on you, Logan hissed, eyes darting to the screen still playing the loop of his own voice. No seat, no log, no problem. He muttered a curse under his breath. Meanwhile, Sarah Devine remained motionless at the bulkhead wall, eyes scanning, heart calm, hands steady. Her internal comms buzzed, full breach confirmed. Admin authority suspended, proceed to intervention. She slipped a small badge from beneath her jacket and clipped it just below her neckline. Athora Federal Compliance Liaison. It wasn't just a job now, it was enforcement. Malik stepped back into the aisle, arms folded. "You can feel it," he whispered to Ezra. Ezra nodded. "It's not her story anymore," he said. "It's ours now." Passengers began calling out, "Let her speak on the intercom." "Where's the captain? Are we just supposed to ignore this?" A man in 2D turned toward Daniel. "You owe her an apology. Publicly." Daniel's voice broke. This is outside of protocol." Amira finally spoke. "Then maybe it's time your protocols changed." She stepped into the aisle. Not with drama, but with purpose. The cabin hushed. Even the whine of the engine felt like it dimmed for her. She reached for the nearest flight attendant phone, and this time, no one stopped her. She lifted it slowly and pressed the broadcast button. Beep. The cabin intercom clicked to life. "My name is Amira Langston. I am the founder and CEO of Ethora Systems." A beat. Eyes widened, gasps, silence. "For 3 years, my company has powered the software that runs Pacific Air's scheduling, security, and passenger systems." Another beat. "Today, your crew erased me. Deliberately, silently, with confidence that no one would care." She scanned the rows, eyes landing on faces that had turned from passive to alert. But this time, people cared. Phones were held higher now. Some passengers cried softly. Some just stared, stunned. Amira continued, her voice calm, measured. "This isn't just about a seat. This is about how easy it's become to delete someone when you don't like who they are, how privilege gets quiet protection, and bias gets programmed into the systems we trust." She paused, then added, "Today." That system broke, and for once it broke in the right direction. From the back, a man shouted, "Tell us what to do next." Ezra panned the camera toward her. Malik leaned in. Sarah smiled, ever so slightly. Amira lowered the phone, then said just loud enough for the cabin to hear, "Next, we hold them accountable." Amira's words still rang in the air. "Next, we hold them accountable." But something else was happening now. It wasn't just passengers rising, it was the crew. Near the curtain separating first class from economy, Alyssa Cheng, a junior flight attendant in her second year on the job, stood frozen. She had heard everything. She had seen everything, and she was shaking. Not out of fear, but because of a choice. The kind they don't train you for in orientation. Next to her, Marcus Wynn, the lead flight tech for the cabin's digital interface, had removed his earpiece. He'd watched Logan work for 2 years, watched him override seating charts, watched him clean problematic manifests. He'd told himself it was protocol. Today proved it was power, abused. Alyssa stepped forward, past her own trembling. She approached Amira, who still stood with the cabin intercom in one hand. Alyssa's voice cracked as she said, "Ma'am, I believe you. I saw them delete your name. I didn't stop them. I didn't speak up. But I will now." Gasps came from nearby seats, but not judgmental ones, relieved ones. This was no longer just about Amira. It was about the quiet ones who finally found their voice. Daniel Huxley's hands dropped to his sides. He looked like a man watching his house collapse brick by brick, each beam pulled not by enemies, but by former allies who had stopped pretending. From the back, Marcus walked forward and handed Amira a folded slip of paper. Sarah stepped beside him, taking it. "What is this?" she asked. He glanced toward Logan, then at Colleen, then back to Amira. "It's a backdoor protocol Logan built. He's been wiping records like this for months. He thought no one would notice. Amira read it, silent. Sarah nodded grimly. "You just made this federal," she whispered. Passengers were murmuring again, a sense of awe, gratitude, curiosity. Who is she really? Why didn't they know who she was? Did she just flip the staff against their own manager? Logan tried to retreat. Too late. Sarah raised her voice, badge now visible on her chest. "Logan Reese, you're under investigation for tampering with federally regulated aviation systems. You're not to touch another device on this aircraft." Logan's mouth opened. No words came out. Colleen turned to Daniel. "We need to shut this down." But Daniel shook his head. "It's already out." Back in row 3, Talia Renner updated her headline, "The flight that fired itself crew turns on management midair." Her phone buzzed again. Network syndication offer, 2 million views, trending in 11 countries. She looked at Amira, then at Alyssa, then back at her screen. This wasn't just a viral story. It was a blueprint. Malik leaned toward Ezra. "You realize what this is?" "Right," he said. Ezra nodded. "Precedent." Amira stepped closer to Alyssa. "What you just did," she said softly, "will matter longer than this flight ever will." Alyssa's eyes welled. "No one's ever looked me in the eye and said that before." Suddenly, the captain's voice came through overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Lee. We apologize for the earlier confusion. I've been informed that several administrative actions taken on this flight were unauthorized and in violation of both federal and internal guidelines. Effective immediately. I have suspended all authority from cabin leadership pending review. We will not proceed with this flight until this matter has been addressed appropriately." The cabin erupted. Passengers clapped, cheered, some cried. Because it wasn't just a safety announcement. It was an acknowledgement. A moment too rare in modern travel. Daniel slumped into an empty seat, staring blankly ahead. His command had dissolved in a matter of minutes. He'd underestimated the wrong passenger and overestimated the silence of everyone else. Amira returned to her seat. Not because she was told to, because she chose to. Alyssa brought her a glass of water, hands trembling slightly. Amira accepted it, looked her in the eye. "Thank you." In row 4, Sarah's console buzzed with a new message. "Federal observers in transit. Ground intervention approved. Secure cabin." She turned to Marcus. "We'll need your logs." He nodded. "Already copied. I've seen enough." For the first time in 40 minutes, the cabin was quiet. Not with fear, but with realization. Something had shifted. For good. Pacific Air Flight 1193 never left the tarmac. The engine hum was steady, the air pressure maintained, but the power dynamic completely airborne. Inside the cabin, phones buzzed like bees' headlines multiplying by the second. CEO erased mid-flight. Crew turn on airline and viral exposure. System built by black woman. Weaponized against her, then she fought back. From row to row, passengers weren't just scrolling, they were witnessing the unraveling of a legacy airline in real time. And the architect of that unraveling still seated quietly in 1A, sipping water, legs crossed, calm as gravity. In New York, at Pacific Air HQ, the executive floor was chaos. Corporate spokespeople huddled around conference calls. Press lines blinked nonstop. Share prices wobbled on the ticker like glass on the edge of a table. On the top floor, CEO Brett Maddox paced with his tie loosened, eyes darkened, voice sharp. How the hell did no one realize who she was? Silence. No one answered, because someone did know and deleted her anyway. At that exact moment, an email popped on Brett's screen. Subject urgent notice. Termination of vendor licensing. Sender Amira Langston. He clicked. The message was short, as of 12:14 p.m. EST. Athora Systems suspends all integration services to Pacific Air per Clause 9.6 of our Ethics Contract Agreement. All passenger interface systems, manifest control, and scheduling logistics will enter fail-safe mode in 5 minutes. You wanted to erase me. I've just erased you legally. No threats, no emotion, just precision. Back on the plane, the overhead monitors flickered again. Passengers watched as the Athora logo slowly dissolved into a new image. A countdown. 4:59, 4:58. Malik Green leaned toward Ezra. "What's happening now?" Ezra whispered. "I think she just pulled the plug." In seat 2C. Sarah Devine's secure tablet flashed, fail-safe activation confirmed. Cabin network now under external control. She glanced at Amira, who offered only a nod, the kind of nod that said, "We've reached the point of no return." Marcus Wynn stepped up to Daniel Huxley, who now sat slumped, jacket wrinkled, eyes glassy. "You built a system where loyalty meant silence," Marcus said. Daniel didn't look at him. "You assumed people would never speak." Marcus continued, "But you forgot what happens when one of them learns how to code, or records you, or uploads truth at 35,000 feet. Daniel finally whispered, "She's ending us." "No," Marcus replied. "She's fixing what you broke." In the rear galley, Colleen Brask muttered to herself, "I gave this company 20 years. Her voice cracked, and from behind her, Alyssa Chang responded, quietly and in one flight, "You gave it away." Outside, a black SUV pulled up to the tarmac. 2 federal compliance officers stepped out. One carried a file, the other a hard drive. Both wore the emblem Doughty Compliance Enforcement Unit. Inside the cabin, Amira opened a message from her general counsel. "Everything is archived. Intercom audio, visuals, flight records. We've pre-filed intent to sue under Title VII and FAA bias compliance clauses. Also, Olivia Kim from Blue Horizon is calling you." Amira smiled. She tapped back, let her wait. A few rows back, Talia Renner hit publish again. New headline, Flight 1193, the 42-minute revolution that grounded an empire. Her screen lit up instantly. Verified accounts retweeted it. Civil rights groups reached out. Activist lawyers offered pro bono backing. This was no longer just news. This was a case study in corporate karma. Suddenly, the captain's voice returned overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain again. I've been advised by our legal and federal compliance teams that this flight will not continue as scheduled. We are returning to gate and initiating a formal passenger deboarding under supervision." To the passenger in seat 1A. On behalf of every honest employee at Pacific Air, we failed you, and we thank you for holding us accountable. The cabin remained still, but hearts moved. Amira stood. Sarah stepped with her. Alyssa joined, shoulders straighter now. Together, they walked toward the galley, not escorted, not removed, respected. Passengers clapped, some cried. One elderly man stood, hand to chest. "You didn't just save your seat," he said. "You gave us back our dignity." Amira's eyes softened. Then she spoke to the entire cabin. They can remove people, they can delete files, but they can't undo truth. Not anymore. Flight 1193 never left the ground. But what it carried, what it ignited, soared far beyond any runway. By the time Amira Langston stepped off the aircraft, the terminal was flooded with live broadcasts, reporters behind velvet ropes, camera lights blinking like artificial sunrise. But she didn't pause for the spotlight. She wasn't here to give a soundbite. She was here to finish what had started in Seat 1A. Behind her, Sarah Devine handed over the hard drive to federal compliance officers. Logan Reese was escorted off the aircraft quietly. No cuffs, no shouting. Just silence, the kind reserved for the end of false authority. Colleen Brask followed, clutching her badge as if it might still protect her. It didn't. And Daniel Huxley. He didn't speak. He just lowered his eyes and walked. In the press room upstairs, Pacific Air CEO Brett Maddox stood before microphones with a stiffness that screamed damage control. He called it a misunderstanding, an unfortunate series of procedural lapses. But the public had already seen the truth, and Amira wasn't interested in apologies with legal padding. Instead, she walked straight through the terminal past media, past flashbulbs, into a private conference room where her team from Athora Systems was already waiting. On the screen, Olivia Kim, CEO of Blue Horizon Airlines, waved remotely. Just say the word. Olivia smiled. We're ready to implement your fare flight system across our fleet. Amira didn't smile back. Not yet. Instead, she looked at her team and said, "Today proved what we always knew. The system isn't broken. It was built this way. Now, we rebuild it on our terms." Back online, the ripple became a wave. We're fair flight now. Amira, erase the bias. This seat has taken millions of people, shared their own stories. A mother in wheelchair denied pre-boarding. A Sikh man pulled aside every flight. A Latina business traveler called honey by a gate agent while watching her white male colleague get called sir. It wasn't just about first class. It was about first assumptions. At Athora HQ, Malik Green stood at a whiteboard sketching out the legal framework for airborne passenger rights reform. He'd just received a full law scholarship from the Athora Foundation. In the next room, Jamal Carter was preparing a presentation titled Ethics in Action When the World is Watching and When It's Not. He'd been hired as a digital strategist for Athora's new Public Integrity Division in New York. Talia Renner's article won 3 journalism awards. She refused the offer from a national cable news network. "I want to stay where stories start," she told her editor, "not where they get watered down." And Alyssa Cheng, she became a spokesperson for a new Pacific Air program Rebuild Crew, a bias accountability and rehabilitation platform designed by the very systems Amira's team had pioneered. But the biggest change, it came in the form of a quiet little icon. On every in-flight tablet, on every major airline now licensing Athora software, a new button appeared, Report Unfair Treatment. Beneath it, every voice, every flight, every time. Amira never wanted to become a symbol. She just wanted a seat she paid for, earned, deserved, and they tried to erase her instead. That night, alone in her apartment, she sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea, her ring on the counter beside her, the same ring that triggered the recording, the one she'd once designed in silence. She thought of her mother again. "Don't raise your voice," her mother used to say. "Raise your standards." She picked up her phone and opened the Fairflight dashboard. One new report had just come in from a flight out of Chicago. Crew apologized in real time after passenger called out bias. No escalation, no threats, just acknowledgement. She smiled, not out of pride, but hope. The phone buzzed once more. A message from Olivia Kim. "We're routing fare flight to international. You've started something global. You okay with that?" Amira typed back, "We don't start revolutions to keep them local." 1 week later, a different airport, a different gate, same woman, same ring. Amira Langston stood at boarding gate C-42 holding a warm paper cup of ginger tea. Her eyes weren't fixed on the flight monitors or the time. They were on the people. The grandmother smiling as a flight attendant helped her with her carry-on. The young black man being greeted with Mr. Cole instead of "Hey, buddy." The Asian couple offered pre-boarding without being asked if they spoke English. No grand gestures, just dignity, just humanity, just care. A familiar ping sounded from her phone. The FareFlight app lit up Passenger Experience Report 4.85 crew recognized all passengers by name. No bias flags. She smiled. It was working. Not perfectly, not completely, but visibly. As she boarded the plane, the attendant glanced at her ticket, then smiled. "Good morning, Miss Langston. We're honored to have you with us today." It was genuine, unforced, no scanning her outfit, no questioning her pass, no subtle curve of suspicion, just a welcome, a seat, finally hers, and respected. She slid into 2A this time, window seat, sunlight soft against her cheek, a new chapter in the same sky. Across the aisle, a woman whispered to her husband, "That's her, isn't it? The CEO?" He leaned forward. "She's the reason Pacific changed everything." Amira looked out the window, pretending not to hear, but her throat tightened anyway. Not from pride, from relief. She thought back to that day. Flight 1193. The deletion, the disbelief, the unraveling. "This seat isn't for you." That phrase had stuck, not like a thorn, like a seed. Because now that seat wasn't just for her. It was for anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong, then proved they did. Sarah Devine messaged from the Authora console. 3 more airlines approved FareFlight overnight. The EU wants to model the system for cross-border air travel. Also, Talia's keynote just dropped. Jamal's episode passed 1 million plays. Amira replied with a single emoji. It was never about going viral. It was about going forward. A soft voice startled her. "Excuse me." Ma'am Amira turned. A young flight attendant, barely 20, stood beside her with nervous eyes and a badge that read, "Kayla. I just wanted to say thank you. My cousin showed me the video. I'm still in training. But because of you, they added new sections, real ones, about dignity, about not assuming, about asking before judging." Amira blinked back emotion. "You're welcome," she said softly. "Just promise me this don't forget how it felt to be seen." Kayla nodded, eyes shining. "I won't." The captain's voice came over the speaker. "Welcome aboard. We're proud to serve you today. We're especially proud that on this flight every seat is earned, honored, and equal." There was a pause. "This one's for you, Amira." The passengers applauded. Some clapped slowly. Others just smiled to themselves because they knew. They'd all seen the footage, read the stories, heard the silence that followed the sentence, "You don't belong here." And now, they were watching it break. Amira opened her tablet and navigated to Equal Skies. the global passenger advocacy platform she'd launched days after the flight. She reviewed a new report. A disabled traveler received early boarding without issue. A trans woman marked respected pronouns acknowledged. A black teenage girl marked given full name acknowledgement, no nickname. She leaned back, closed her eyes, not revenge, just reform. Rooted in something deeper than anger, built in something longer than shame. Her phone buzzed once more. A trending hashtag, "This seat," is taking photos poured in. A father with his son, smiling in 1A, a Sikh man praying quietly by the window, a black woman holding a tablet showing Amira's face, captioned because of her. I didn't flinch today. She didn't need to post a thing. She had already spoken, quietly, firmly. And now, the world was answering back. As the plane rolled toward takeoff, sunlight bathed the cabin. No tension, no games, just a woman in her rightful seat, sipping tea, wearing the same ring that once broadcast a revolution now resting peacefully on her finger. Because this time, no one questioned if she belonged. They just asked, "Would you like anything else?" "Ms. Langston." She smiled. "Yes," she said. "I'd like everyone to feel this way someday." She never screamed. She never begged. She just let the truth speak and made sure the world was listening. Amira Langston didn't come to fight. She came to fly. But when systemic bias tried to clip her wings, she didn't fold. She built a flight plan of her own. In 30 minutes, a seat became a symbol, a flight became a reckoning, and a woman they tried to erase became a blueprint for change. This story wasn't just about her. It was about all of us who've been questioned, doubted, dismissed, not because we lacked value, but because someone refused to see it. But now, the world is watching, and the skies will never be the same. If this story moved you, made you angry, gave you hope like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that speak truth to power. Because silence protects systems, but stories, they shatter them. Drop a comment below if you've ever felt erased and how you took your seat back. This is more than a video. This is the beginning of a movement. Thank you for flying with us. We'll see you in the next story.